if Xbox leaves the traditional console space, it leaves Sony with a monopoly over that market. Nintendo doesn't really compete with it in that space. Only Xbox does. We know what happens when you don't have competition. We saw it with the pre-Zen Intel and somewhat at the moment with Nvidia and their 8 gig 4060 Ti's. Do you think Xbox leaving this market will lead Sony to be disincentivized to release the PS6 with large improvements over the PS5, or to price it competitively? Many thanks. John, what do you reckon about this one?
Well, first of all, I really, really strongly disagree with the notion that Nintendo doesn't compete in the same space. Like, whether they've said that or not, like, they absolutely do. Right?
Yes.
They're vying for people's times, and they're in the video game space. They compete. It doesn't matter what the hardware is. They are absolutely in the same market. So It would not be a monopoly. Secondly, I don't think Xbox is leaving the market either. Like, I think they're changing strategy, and maybe hardware sales alone won't be the big thing, but there will be another Xbox. And
I think
I don't think Sony can just afford to just say, "Oh, well, job's done," and then just start making garbage. They will lose if they do that. They will lose market share. They can't afford to do that. They won't actually have a monopoly on this stuff. And if they thought they did, somebody else would come in and take it from them.
Possibly. I think the contention being put forward here is that obviously there will be next generation Xboxes because they've committed to 10th gen, right? I think the issue is the question of what that box is going to be. Now, the sort of, based on the sort of comments that have come from Phil Spencer, rightly or wrongly, the interpretation has been that there will be a handheld of some kind. And then we have the stated intention to produce a console with the biggest technological leap of all time. Now, the question is whether those two consoles will actually be traditional consoles in the sense that they're sort of widely available mainstream devices. Or, as has been put forward by some people, the idea that Xbox hardware is possibly a bit more boutique in nature. That's the word that keeps coming up for some reason, boutique, which suggests lower volumes, but, it is still an Xbox, but possibly not vying in the same sort of space as PlayStation. I agree with you, John, that the competition isn't just about power. It's basically the primary competitive element is going to be money, of course, and crucially time spent on those platforms, in which case there, obviously there's a lot of competition in the gaming space and in the console space. I think Microsoft are just being a bit more forward about the fact that the console market is going to change, and the concept of what a console is, how it's priced, and how it's basically earns its keep is going to change. Phil Spencer has made noises about the idea that a box that is subsidized through the sale of software doesn't seem to be the route forward because it's not increasing the total addressable market. There, a cheap console isn't bringing more people into the space anymore.
Tell that to Nintendo.
Well, quite. Oliver, what do you think about this?
Yeah, I mean, I do have some concerns about it, but I'd kind of pose the question is there really competition between Sony and Microsoft now? I mean, the Series X and the PS5, they're very comparable machines, right? They serve a very similar purpose. Most games are released on both devices. And yet the PS5 is outselling the Series line of machines. I think that, also we don't know exactly what Microsoft's plans are. They may have a console that is roughly competitive. We don't exactly know what that'll look like you mentioned. And it could be very much they have like a line, or if you'll forgive me, a series of machines that comprise several price points, different mixes of the home console and portable console kind of styles of machines. And it could be that line actually induces players to buy an Xbox that would have otherwise bought a PlayStation, not because they're producing a $500 box that's better than their $500 box, but because they're interested in a portable console or they're interested in a very high-end console. And Sony isn't delivering that, but Microsoft could. I don't know, just kind of spitballing here, but certainly what we see from Nintendo is that when you give players a very compelling, different kind of experience, they might end up choosing that over the traditional $500, $400 console box that is just as much hardware packed into as small of a price point as possible.
This is a tricky one because I honestly don't think, obviously I've met and spoke to Mark Cerny a couple of times now whenever a new console rolls up rather. And he's never concerned about the competition. He's concerned about making the best possible box. And what makes the best possible box is essentially defined by factors that are outside of his control, such as the price and how much it's going to cost to build that machine. So I don't think the philosophy of producing the best possible PlayStation is going to change at all. The question is how much they can achieve within that price point, which is far more of a constricting factor on PlayStation than taking a look at what the opposition is doing. They don't really seem to take too much notice of what Microsoft does from a design standpoint. And, that strategy seems to have worked for them quite well. They consistently produce excellent hardware that people buy into. I just think that the whole ball game is shifting somewhat because, the pace of technological advancement is slowing down. So the concept of what is going to be able to be produced in like the 2026 to 2028 window is kind of up for grabs at the moment. We're kind of seeing that with the mooted specifications for PS5 Pro. It's not a huge advance in silicon. It's an advance in terms of a more holistic approach to what makes a games console. They've recognized that they want to have machine learning based silicon in there, as opposed to having a gigantic GPU, which they probably wouldn't have been able to do anyway with the current process nodes that are available to them. So I don't really see this as a monopoly situation. And possibly they will be the only console within that specific niche, but there is a lot of outside competition in terms of, Xbox isn't going away. They're going to have something. They're going to sort of try and pitch it to be appealing, obviously. Nintendo obviously isn't going away, and they're all competing for, players and time and money. So I'm not particularly worried about PlayStation becoming complacent in terms of creating the console. I mean, there's certainly a lot of satellite decisions that have been made which do sort of harken back to the PlayStation 3 era where maybe they got a bit too big for their boots. Do you know what I mean? But I don't see it coming into hardware design. I don't know.